People always ask me why I left the States, but what they don't understand that I don't hate the States, but the reason why I left is a lot more personal than a lot of people expect it to be. Hello everybody, it's Paige here. Welcome to my channel. Welcome back to my channel. As you guys can tell from the title and from the beginning of the video, this is going to be more of a sit-down video of me explaining why I left the States. So before I can actually go more in depth of the reason, I need to give you guys a little more of a backstory about my life and how everything led up of me moving to Belgium and then how I ended up being here in France. So let's just get it started. So I was born and raised in upstate New York. My father is American and my mother is Belgium, and I lived in upstate New York for 17 years. And because my father was American, my mother was Belgium, every year we would go back and forth from the States to Belgium to visit the other side of the family that still lived in Belgium. So I definitely had the two cultures mixed in just growing up, and from my perspective I always thought that was like a normal thing, having like multicultures and everything. And so never really, in my perspective, never really thought it was weird. I thought it was like the same for everybody. I didn't realize that until I was like much older and everything, but I did live in upstate New York for 17 years. Now let's just get a little more into details on what, a little more back. So basically what happened, yes, I lived in the States for 17 years. I moved out when I was 17 and a half years old, but when I was 12 years old, my parents split and my mother was going back to Belgium. She originally wanted me to go with her, but I didn't want to. I wanted to stay, and I think I probably should have left at that time, but I didn't. And being 12 years old, I'm like at the reach of like puberty and everything. So like I was like definitely stuck on, do I pick my father? Do I pick my mother? And yes, there was a lot of talk behind my ear on who I should stay and who I should not stay with. So at 12 years old, I did stay with my father, but I feel like because I was 12 years old, at 12 years old is like so hard to choose what do I want or which parents do I want to live. And we're talking about a situation where I'm not moving away like an hour down the street or something like that. We are talking about, do I stay in the country that I was born and raised, and no, 100%, or do I move to a country where I do not know how to speak the language? I might know a little bit of the culture, but not 100% or anything. So it was like such a hard decision to make at 12 years old. Like I didn't even know it was best. I did. Like that was something that I was not worried about until that moment. You know, at 12 years old, you worried about who likes me, who doesn't like me. So it's definitely such a major life change, a life decision to force upon a child to make. Now I understand at 12 years old, you're old enough to somewhat understand that your parents are splitting and stuff like that, and you want your child to force that. But at the same time, in my situation, you were also talking about a whole different country and everything. But yeah. Now, after making the decision of me actually staying in the States, my mom moved back to Belgium, and I stayed an extra 5 years in the States. And this was probably like my most vulnerable time in my life. Within those 5 years, I was very, like not very, but extremely unhappy because I was living with my dad, I was living with my brother. I did not necessarily had like a good female role model in my life to look upon and everything, and I just needed that mother figure to help me get into that. And I just, after a while, I'm like, oh, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I should have left with my mother. And every time I brought it up on how unhappy I was with just my life in general or anything like that, or maybe it would have been best if I go live with my mom, all my feelings weren't validated. I was always trying to, oh, you're being dramatic, you just want to start an argument and stuff like that. And I have asked multiple times to go see a therapist at that time and everything, and was always pushed aside, saying, no, you don't need it, just stop crying. I was definitely raised upon like, oh, if you're going to cry, I'm going to give you something to cry about. And it was like that quote unquote fit in stereotypical toxicity in some way. I'm not sure if that's the correct form, but after a while I'm like, oh no, I think it's best to go live with my mother. It always end up turning into an argument with everybody around and everything, and it was like so hard and everything, but on my part, because I'm like, okay, well, I'm coming to you because you guys are supposed to be like that side of the family. In the States, I'm like, okay, well, I'm coming to you guys because I need help with whatever's going on in my mind. Are you telling me I'm being dramatic or whatever? It always ended up being an argument, no matter what and everything. So I was definitely very, very depressed within those 5 years. And if I did not move the way that I did, which I'll get into details later on, is that if I just stayed, then to be fair, I think I wouldn't be here, like alive, or I would be in prison. I'm trying to be very careful on what I can and cannot say for YouTube, but basically I won't be here alive, or I would be in prison basically. Because near the end, I was just acting up. I'm like, okay, well, everybody's looking at me like the bad guy or anything. No one's taking me seriously on how I feel. So might as well, let's just act like how everybody expects me to act. And then obviously when I started acting out, I got a lot of attention. Because not the good type of attention, but like the bad attention. Like, oh, what you're doing, you're grounded and stuff like that. But the reason I kept on doing it because I was getting attention. I'm like, okay, well, I'm doing something, now you're paying attention to me, so I'm going to keep doing it. So it was just a lot. And let's get in more further about me being unhappy and everything. I was definitely struggling like a lot. Like I definitely did not have the support. Like I said earlier, I was coming out. Like I need, basically saying, I even said I need help. I need to go see a professional, and it was always put aside. Basically saying I was being over dramatic and stuff like that. Now let's just go back to when I mentioned I did not have any female role models in my life during that time when within the last 5 years I was there. There was no positive female role models around me. None of them wouldn't allow me to be who I was, and basically no guidance or anything like that. So basically, for example, every time I go shopping, I was not allowed to shop in the junior section because I was too fat. And at that time, I truly believed that I was extremely fat, because after a while, like, okay, well, I can shop here, so now I have to shop like how old women dress up. I'm not dressing like as like a 15-year-old or anything like that. And I was always put down. Like, oh, you really wearing that? Oh, you really listen to that heavy metal music and stuff like that? I was always put down by the females around me. And especially the females that are supposed to be there for like the part of the family were the most worthless part of my life. And it was like so hard to find the confidence to get that confidence back in order to be like, you know what, if it, like, that's fine if you don't like that type of music. It's fine if you don't like the style. It's okay if you don't like the tattoos, that like if they're not liking the tattoos or anything. But this is who I am, and you're degrading me for who I am and stuff like that. So it was a lot of criticizing, going around, especially with the females around my life at that time. Now, let's just go to the point where I finally decided to move to Belgium, because it's basically, I'm going to keep repeating myself on how unhappy I was within 5 years. I think you guys understand that part by this point. So 17 finally comes. I'm 17 and a half. I went to see my mom, and I was supposed to go back, take the plane to go back. But I basically go to my mom. I'm like, I told my mom, like 2 weeks before, I'm like, I don't want to go. She didn't take me seriously. She thought I was, okay, I'm just saying that because I'm mad at my dad about something. And then in a few days, it was like 3 days before I'm supposed to take the plane, I told my mom again, I do not want to go back. I'm not going to go on that plane. And we told my dad, and it was one of the most difficult moments of my life. There was a lot of emotions, and it wasn't a decision that was very easy for everybody. And let me tell you, those I say 2 or 3 days were just arguments going back and forth. I felt like no one was really listening to one of each other. But now, looking back, okay, I'm can understand why everybody would take it the wrong way and not the best, because I called up saying, I'm not coming home, I'm not taking the plane, I'm staying where I am. That part, I can understand why there was a lot of tension and everything. But at the same time, in my situation, I felt like it was the only best decision to make, because I had, within the 5 years I was still in the States when my mom left, I left to go live with my mom, and it was always no, 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 no. So I truly thought this was the best decision at that time to do, is to go with my mom and just go up, I'm not taking the plane, you can't do nothing about it, and if you do force me to come back, I'm going to be 18 in like 4 months, and as soon as I turn 18, I'm coming back. Like, I'm leaving, you ain't going to see me if you're going to force me to come back. So it was like definitely a lot, there were just a lot of emotions going on during that time period of me saying, I'm not taking the plane back. It was just a lot of argument. It was like very, very mentally exhausting of having that conversation through the phone and everything. It was like a lot of drama going on, a lot of emotions were going on around that time. Then, after we finally made the decision that I was going to stay with my mother in Belgium and everything, I found new challenges. Not the same challenges like I was back in the States, but challenging more of like adjusting to a new country. I had to basically rebuild my whole life. And then just the challenges of just starting over. So I was definitely happy being with my mom. There was definitely a whole change in my attitude and everything, the way that I dress, how I bought myself and everything. But more of the difficulties is just starting over. So I had to learn the language. Because mind you, when I moved to Belgium, I did not know how to speak French. So I lived in the region where you speak French. And I had to learn how to speak French. I did not know a single word in French. I just said, I just go to my mom. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going back. I'm staying here with you. Like, no big deal. Well, why not? So it was definitely a lot of struggle of like starting over again. Mind you, I only had one suitcase that was brought with me. I only had one suitcase and everything. And now I like, where I am, I definitely need more than one suitcase to if I decide to go back. It's a lot. So there was definitely challenges of adapting to the culture, learning the language, and just not take everything in offense and everything. So I know, like, I already mentioned about this struggles about living abroad, so I'm not going to really go into details in this video, but I'm just bringing it up now because it is part of this video. I feel like of me just explaining on how I got here and everything. So, but I would definitely say just starting over, especially in a country that you do not know and everything, not knowing language and everything. I definitely faced a lot of those struggles in the first beginning. Now, looking back of how I became where I am. So basically, yeah, I left in Belgium the majority of the time, and then now it's going to be almost 5 years I'm in France. And the only reason I got here in France, the ski station I'm at, basically there was a hotel that opened. The director was a good friend of my mom's, and my mom was able to get me to the job and everything. And ever since, I never left. And just looking back and everything, I definitely feel sorry for my younger self, or the way that I acted and everything. I should have came to my mother a lot sooner about the situation and everything, because I do feel like she doesn't know 100% of everything that went down and everything. And I don't think I understand the stress about me, her side and everything. I don't blame her the way that I was acting and everything, because the only person I can blame is myself for the way that I acted. But just make that hardest decision at the last minute, the way that I did and everything. I do believe, though, those experiences taught me like a life lesson. Like it made me the way who I am today and everything. And just moving to countries, so like I lived in 3 different countries now, because I lived in the States, I lived in Belgium, and now I'm living in France. So just living in a country, like a different country and everything, definitely helped me grow as a person. It taught me some independence. It taught me, yeah, in some situation it might be very difficult and everything. Like I live in France, I'm like way in the middle of everybody and everything, and it just shaped me the way that I am today, and I'm just very, very grateful for that. Now leaving my home country wasn't about running away. It was about trying to build a life where I felt happier and felt more supported, and just more like myself as a person. And looking back now, it was one of the hardest decisions I ever made, but it also changed the course of my life, and I'm just grateful about that.